submitted some more charges for your clerk to take a look at, and we shared those with the state. And he's looking at some other issues right now. So I just asked if he'd be allowed to remain outside the courtroom.
Sure, I see that as a team decision anyway.
The second matter I want to bring up is we need to have the car seat brought back into the courtroom. I need to be able to use it in argument. It was put in the car by order for the...
Well, I had planned on bringing that up at the end of the evidence, and I'd rather bring the jury in and get that done. And then we can talk about the car seat. Because I know it's not here. Does that solve that problem?
I don't know that it solves the problem, but I agree that we need to talk about it. So we can do that whenever the court's ready.
Sounds like it does solve the problem. We'll talk about it. Problem solved. Very good.
That's all right. Please be seated.
Proceed, please.
Call Detective Ed Stockinger.
Yes, I do.
Proceed, please.
Thank you.
If you would, sir, when you're comfortable, adjust that mic. Introduce yourself to the jurors. Spell your first and last name for our court reporter.
Detective Edward Stockinger, EDWARD-STOCKINGER.
And where are you employed, sir?
Cobb County Police Department, assigned to the Crimes Against Persons Unit.
What do you do with the Crimes Against Persons Unit?
I work everything from homicides, rapes, robberies, shootings.
How long have you been with Cobb County Police Department in total?
10 years.
Have you always worked in the Crimes Against Persons Unit?
No, I've been in the Crimes Against Persons Unit for 3 years.
Why don't you describe to the jury what sort of training and education you have that qualifies you to work at the Cobb County Police Department? And how is it that you moved or transitioned into the Anti-Crimes Unit?
Basically, it's just having a background working violent crime usually helps. Before I got into the Crimes Against Persons Unit, I worked 6.5 years. It was called the Viper Unit. It was a uniform street crime unit. Plus, on top of that, prior to Cobb County, I worked with New York City Police Department for 11 years, and I was a detective for almost 3 years with New York City Police Department.
And I was going to ask you, I gather from your accent that you're not originally from Georgia, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What part of the country are you from, and how is it that you transitioned down here to Georgia?
New York, and I transitioned down here in 2006.
Okay. And is that when you essentially started working with Cobb County Police?
That's correct.
Now, I want to talk about this particular case. You had some limited involvement in this case, is that correct?
That's correct.
This jury's already heard an abundance of evidence about the difference between a lead and a secondary detective, and then some support roles that other detectives take on. Why don't you describe how it is that you first became involved in the investigation in this particular case?
Initially, I was myself and Detective Racy were in the office when the call came in, and it was just us two at the time. At the time, he was our lieutenant, Lieutenant Farrell. When the call came in, he asked myself and Detective Racy to respond out to the scene. told me that we had a child that was deceased in a vehicle. While I went out to the scene, I contacted Detective Stoddard. Him and Detective Murphy were out in the field doing follow-ups, and just wanted to give him a heads up what we were heading out to. He told me over the phone that he was going to meet us out at the scene. Myself and Detective Racy were the first ones to arrive on the scene. I just gathered some brief information from the uniform guys, and while I was doing that, that's when Detective Stoddard and Murphy arrived.
Now, was Detective Racy already with you at the time that you initially received the call to respond to the Acres Mill scene?
Yes, we were in the office together.
And this jury's already heard from Detective Racy. It's been a little while now, but he as you may recall, is the police officer that went to Flexi down here, which I know that this jury's going to be familiar with. When you received that call, did you both travel together to Acres Mill first?
Yes, he rode in the car with me.
Had responding officers, and I'm talking about uniform officers, Piper, Gallimore, those officers, were they already on scene by the time you arrived?
Yes.
And what about Defendant Mr. Harris? Was he already detained at that point?
Yes, he was.
I want to ask you about the scene as you found it. Did you observe Cooper Harris at that time?
I didn't physically see his body. By the time I got there, there was already a tarp or a blanket covering his body.
Okay. I do want to ask you, though, have you had an opportunity to review the medical examiner's report and also the medical records that are already in evidence as State's Exhibit 368?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And were you asked to do a comparison in terms of measurements of the life-size doll that was created in this particular case? Can you see those again, Mr. Kilgore?
Yeah, I want to see what you
Sure.
No, 368, I'm sorry. What was 368?
Oh, those are medical records. These are the ones that came in through Jackson, Martin Jackson.
Okay, you mind if I look at these?
No, not at all. So my question was, did you have an opportunity to actually compare the doll to the measurements that were included in the medical records as well as the medical examiner's report?
Yes, I did.
And I'm going to show you states 937 and 938. Yesterday we actually photographed you taking a measurement of, for example, the circumference of the doll's head so we can get that accurate number.
That's correct.
And 937 and 938, those fair and accurate depictions of that measurement being taken of the circumference of the doll's head.
Yes, it is.
And in fact, those are your fingers holding the tape measure.
Yes, it is.
Tender states 937, 938.
For what it's worth, I don't object.
So, do you still need those? The jury's already heard from Dr. Frist and from Martin Jackson very early on in the case. If there was evidence presented about the measurements.
I'm going to object to that. Judge, the state has continually objected to any time we reference any prior testimony from any witness. So I'm going to object now that they want to do it.
I'll phrase it. Were you able to compare the measurements that you took of the dolls to the medical examiner's report?
Yes, I was.
Hang on. I'm going to object to that. I don't believe the medical examiner's report is in evidence.
All of those measurements are in evidence. Co-counsel Mr. Lumpkin asked that before for the jury.
The question that was asked referenced the medical examiner's report. That is not in evidence. So I'm going to object to the form of the question.
I don't think there's anything improper with the form of the question, especially in light of the fact that they've already heard from the medical examiner as well as Martin Jackson confirming the accuracy of the doll's.
I'm going to object to that.
I'll allow no objection. Disregard the colloquy between counsel. And colloquy means what they're saying to each other.
Were you able to compare to confirm the measurements were within an inch?
Yes.
And I want to look, just so we have a basis of knowledge, looking at the medical records, which are 368. In particular, I wanted to show you the evidence of victim Cooper Harris's last documented visit through Kaiser Permanente on March the 3rd of 2014. For our record on page 1721 of 368 is that HC, it actually says head circumference for age. Is that documented here in terms of the percentile?
Yes, it is.
What's the percentile there?
66.
And in two other locations for that same visit, is the number in inches documented, and I'm referring you to 1718 of the same exhibit number. Do you see what the inches of circumference of the segment?
Yes, it is.
What was that?
It's 19.09.
And then, was that the percentage you just told us about on that same page, 1718?
Yes, it is.
And
And that's 66%.
I want to compare that to height as well. Is there a height documented here for Cooper Harris during this last visit, March 3rd, 2014?
Yes, there is.
What's that height?
2 foot 7 inches.
Okay, so let's do 2 feet is 24 inches, plus 7 is 31 inches, is that correct?
That's correct.
And this is just a month and a half before the autopsy, correct? Or roughly? March 3rd, 2014. Excuse me, 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months.
My math is terrible, my apologies. But just 3 months before.
That's correct.
Looking at State's Exhibit 937, what did you document the circumference of the head to be? You can look at 938.
It was approximately 18 and a half.
18 and a half inches.
Just a half inch from the circumference, actually a half inch smaller than the circumference that was documented in the medical record. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Let's talk a little bit about what you did after initially responding to the scene. Okay. Let's talk about after you responded to the scene. At some point, were you and Detective Racy tasked with doing something else in this particular case?
Yes, we were.
And what's that?
To locate Ross Harris's wife, wLeann, and to try to go interview her.
Were you able to get a phone number at some point?
Yes, I was.
Did you recall where you got the phone number from?
No, I don't remember.
At some point, did you actually reach out to Leanna Harris by phone so you could find out where she was?
Yes, I did.
Can you explain to the jury what happened?
I called her on the phone and asked her where she was at the moment, and she told me she was at Ross's work. I asked her if she can stay there until we arrived over there, that I needed to speak with her, and that I would do it there.
Did she indicate that she would remain and speak with you?
Yes.
After that, what did you and Detective Racy do?
We then left the scene and went to Ross's work to go meet up with her.
Did you travel together?
Yes, we did.
At that point in time, did either you or Racy have a handheld voice recorder?
Yeah, I had an Olympus voice recorder.
And prior to speaking with her, did you activate that Olympus voice recorder so that you could record your interaction with Leanna Harris?
Yes, I did.
All right, and let's ask you, looking at what was captured, I had you last night look at 2 audio files that were included on State's Exhibit 935, correct?
That's correct.
And having looked at those 2 audio files, are those fair and accurate recordings, the actual copies of the recordings of the interaction that you captured with Leanna Harris on June 18th, 2014?
Yes, they are.
Tender State's 935.
Admitted.
First thing I want to ask you, Detective, is when you first made contact with her, did you have to do something called a death notification?
Yes, I did.
And explain to the jury what death notification is, and is this just one of the more tough parts of the job that you have to do?
It's probably the hardest part of the job. Usually go out to the scene, regardless what kind of death it is, and try to meet with the most immediate family and sit them down and in the easiest way explain to them that a family member has passed.
And in this particular case, was that your responsibility to make the death notification to Leanna Harris?
Yes, it was.
And is that captured on the recording that we've just discussed?
Yes, it is.
This recording is actually broken up into 2 parts. The last 5 minutes for me is where you all are in the car with each other. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So let's talk about when you first met with her. What were you able to visibly see her? And this is obviously just an audio recording, correct?
That's correct.
We don't have video of her, but why don't you describe your interaction with her and describe what she looked like? Was she crying? What did you see?
No, she wasn't crying. From what I remember when we first got out to the scene, she was out in front of the work, and there was, I believe, also a security guard out there with her. I asked the security guard if he had some kind of conference room or something that we can use to have a little privacy so we can talk to her. And at which time he took us in the building. Like I said, she wasn't crying. She really didn't have much emotion when I first made contact with her.
At some point, was she allowed to use the restroom, and is that captured on the recording?
Yes.
Okay. And what about a phone call? At some point, was she also allowed to take a phone call from her mother?
Yes, while we were in the middle of the interview, her phone rang and she said it was her mom, asked if she could take the call, and I allowed her to take the call.
You weren't a party to the conversation between the two of them, is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Could you hear her mother's emotional state through the phone nonetheless when they were talking with each other?
Yes.
Describe what you heard.
Hysterical, yelling on the phone.
Okay. This would be grandmother of Cooper Harris, correct?
That's correct.
And at any point while you were speaking to Leanna Harris, did you ever see her tear up or having cry or anything like that?
No.
Did she ask to see anybody while you were speaking with her?
The only person she asked to see was Ross.
And did you explain where he was?
Yes, I did.
Did you also try to ascertain what the routine was for the transport of Cooper Harris to and from daycare?
Yes, I did.
Is all that captured on the recording as well?
Yes, it is.
A couple other questions for you. At any point during your conversation with Leanna Harris, did you tell her where Cooper Harris was going to be taking his body?
Yes, I did.
And where did you tell her that Cooper Harris was going to be taken?
I told her his body was going to be taken to the Cobb County Medical Examiner's office.
At any point during these two recorded times, either before you get in the car or after you get in the car, did it ever become contentious between the two of you or anything like that?
No.
All right. And then at some point, did you even have a discussion with her about the necessity of getting a search warrant for her home?
Yes.
Okay. And did you advise that was going to be something that was going to occur?
Yes.
Did you even have a discussion about a key, and can you explain that to the jury?
When we were done at Ross's work, she actually rode in my car, and I told her that we would stop by her house first, that there was going to be possibly a search warrant done on the house, and I asked her if she had a key to her house, and that we needed to stop by the house first.
And I want to ask you about some comments that you made to her during this. Did you talk about at all, being in shock? Did you have any discussion about that or anything like that?
Yeah, I did mention to her saying that I know you're probably in shock over what happened. It's not an easy thing to deal with. Did
you intend that to be some sort of clinical definition of what was going on with her?
I was just really trying to, warm up to her and try to comfort her a little bit and just feel her out while I was talking to her.
Okay. There's a point that's captured here as well where you're actually on the phone with the supervisor. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And just so the jury's not off-put by that, do you as detectives sometimes use a little more colorful language than we sometimes use in the courtroom setting?
Yes, the recording did capture the F word.
Okay. You use that in describing something that was going on in your portion of the investigation, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. With that, I'm going to now ask for permission to play the recording. Did you indeed transfer her to Cobb Police Headquarters after going to her home?
Yes, once we were done with the residence, then I drove her to headquarters.
And you're the one that actually did that?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that, so that Detective Stoddard could do a further sit-down interview with her?
That's correct.
All right. Judge, I'd like permission to play the first recording, which is captured on States 935.
Detective Stockinger, Detective Racy, 6/18/2014, 5:49, meeting with mother, Leanna Harris. Show myself in 6032 out of 2600 Cumberland Boulevard on a follow-up. World Week Code 4. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. There's really no easy way to tell you this. Your child is deceased. I'm very sorry to have to tell you that.
Where's my husband?
Your husband is up at our headquarters right now. I am going to have to go over a few things with you. Just pretty much about the day and everything. Has he contacted you already?
I talked to him at 4.
Okay. And what did he tell you at 4?
That he was going to a movie with some friends and that I was going to pick up Cooper from daycare.
Okay. And that's the last time you've talked to him?
Yes.
He hasn't called you since then?
I've been trying to call him. He
Okay.
tried to call me once, but it's like the phone went dead when he called me.
Okay.
And I haven't been able to get in touch with him since.
So he told you at 4 he was going to meet some friends?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was supposed to happen today with your child?
He was supposed to take Cooper to daycare, and I was going to pick him up.
Okay. What time did he leave for work this morning?
I don't know because I left before him.
Okay. What time did you leave this morning?
I left at 7.
Okay.
7:15.
And is this a daily routine?
Sometimes I take him, sometimes he takes him.
Okay. But he's taken him to daycare before?
Yes.
Okay. Where's the daycare located?
It's right across, less than a mile.
Okay.
It's at the SFC.
Okay. Have you heard anything right now? I mean, I know since you haven't talked to him, you haven't heard anything from him, but what have you heard so far?
Nothing.
Okay. Before I get into detail with you on everything, just some quick questions. What's your guys' relationship like? And I know some things might sound ridiculous, but I have to ask these questions just because of the situation.
We have a good relationship.
Okay. You guys get along? Okay. And what about, how old is Cooper, right?
He was fixing to turn 2.
Okay. What's Cooper's birthday?
8/2.
How long's he been going to that daycare for?
He was 3 months old. Are you going to tell me what happened?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to tell you what happened. I'm not going to. As far as from what we have right now, like I said, he's at our headquarters. Your husband's at our headquarters right now getting interviewed. But all I know right now is that he went to work this morning. I guess he said he got to work around sometime after 9 this morning. And he left work, I guess, probably when he called you around 4 o'clock, 4:15, and realized that he never dropped Cooper off, so Cooper was in the car all day. Has he ever done anything like that, forgetting about it? Do you know what might have made him forget about it?
No. Can I answer the phone?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello? Do you want me to tell you what's wrong? Cooper is not with us anymore. Ross forgot to drop him off at daycare, and he was left in the car all day. Where are you? Will you please pull over? Please pull over. I need you to pull over. I don't know. I'm not processing this right now. He is at the police headquarters. I'm not processing this right now. Okay, so that's why I don't have a reaction, because I don't know what my reaction will be. But I need you to just go somewhere and be safe. I don't know what to tell you to do. I don't know what to do. This does not feel like it's happening. I don't know. I don't know what to. I don't know. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. I'm at Ross's work. I'm going to let you go right now, okay? Because I'm with some detectives. I need for this day to not have happened. I don't know. I don't know.
Just tell her to make sure she gets herself somewhere safe, and then you can call her back in a little bit, because we got to go over some more stuff, okay?
Gotta go. Okay. If you want to start heading this way, you can. I love you too.
How long you and Ross been married?
For 8 years in May.
And this is your first child? Your only child?
Yes.
Okay. What address you guys live at?
What?
What address do you live at?
1212 Winds Ridge.
That's all telling me. What's the name of the condo? Or is it those houses on the other side?
It's called Winds Ridge. It's condominiums.
Okay.
So there's no like apartment number or anything? It's just 1212?
It's just 1212.
Okay.
That is our apartment.
Okay. All right. I know you're still trying to process everything right now. There's a few steps we're going to have to take that we have to get done tonight. Okay? And one of them is we're going to have
Is
to...
I going to get to see my husband?
Yes, you're going to get the... We'll get to all of that. All right? Right now, we have to work on this step first, okay? Because the fact that it involves a child, we're going to have to go from here to your apartment. And then once we get done at your apartment, then we can most likely, if you want, so you don't even have to drive, we can take you with us to headquarters. And we'll take it from there, but we're going to have to take a step at a time, okay? Like I said, I know you're still trying to process everything, and this is not an easy thing to be going through your mind right now. But do you want to leave your car here and ride with us to your apartment?
I don't see what it matters.
Well, I just don't. I don't want you to be driving if you're
Well,
not.
no, I can't drive. No.
That's what I mean. I don't want that to. So what we're going to do in a few minutes is we're going to go from here to your apartment first, and then we'll go from there to headquarters, okay? I know you're still in shock. Are you with me on all of this right now? Okay.
I go to the restroom first?
Yeah, absolutely.
You gonna be okay? In the restroom?
And you said that this has never happened before, that he's forgotten about him or anything like that, right?
No.
Okay.
We talk about it a lot. That's been one of my biggest fears. It always has
Talk
been.
about what, accidentally leaving him in the car?
It's always been a big fear of mine. Always.
Has anything happened though that might have
No.
sparked you guys?
No, it's just always been a fear.
Okay.
You know, you hear about it on the news.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How is Ross with Cooper?
He's a wonderful father.
Okay.
No, I just want you to know, I don't want you to get offended by any of the questions.
I'm not
It's just-
offended. I know why
Okay.
you're asking.
Okay.
I
It's just,
just-
I know.
I just don't know how we're going to make it through this. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know how to do this. I just don't know how you do this.
It's, like I said, I can't tell you that I know how you feel because I don't. But I can tell you that I've been doing this long enough that it's not an easy thing for a parent to have to go through. It's gonna be times like this where, you know, your family's all gonna have to come together and you're gonna have to rely on the support of your family. What's that?
I just. Ross is never going to forgive himself. This is something that I just really hope I just wake up and it's a bad dream.
And honestly, I wish I could be sitting here telling you that it is a bad dream. But unfortunately, I can't tell you that. What's going to happen is Cooper is going to be taken to the medical examiner's office, and they're going to perform an exam on him, and that's just standard procedure to determine the cause of the death. This is something that you're not going to be rushed with any decisions on anything. The medical examiner's office is going to work with you on everything. But that's something you don't even have to think about right this second when it comes to arrangements and everything with Cooper. But like I said, they're going to work with you on everything and help you get through it just like we are. Okay? There's not a lot I'm going to be able to do I'm going to try to make everything as easy as possible on you tonight, okay? What time does he normally go into work? Does he have set hours or?
Yeah, when we have set hours, it's typically around 9.
Okay,
It could be earlier, it could be later.
okay. What did you say the name of the daycare was again? I'm sorry.
So Little Apron Academy, that's how
Little
we
Apron.
go stay care.
Okay. And you said you and Ross have a good relationship. No. Have you ever had any domestic issues in the past with him or anything?
No,
Okay.
nothing out of the normal.
Just normal, once in a while
Yeah.
arguments.
Yeah,
Okay. Any arguments over Cooper at all?
no.
Okay.
Where do you work at? I'm sorry, I missed that.
I work for DeVita Dialysis. I'm a dietitian.
Okay. All right. want to do this? You go to the bathroom. We'll get your car moved into a spot in the parking lot.
I think it's cranked with the keys in it, actually.
Okay.
That phone is gonna die.
Now, just so you know, I'm going to explain the whole process of why we're doing what we're doing with going to your house, because, like I said, it's a child. We have to go to the house. I don't know how they're going to handle that end of it yet. There might not be, depending how my supervisor wants to handle it, but there might be a search warrant done just to look through the house, and it's all revolves around the child. Okay, it's another standard thing with a child, just to make sure, and I don't see anything even sitting here talking with you what would make me believe different, but it's just something we have to do, just as seeing the living conditions for the child and stuff like that, okay? So, just so you're not, and I don't want to leave you in the dark on anything, okay? All right, why don't we get you to a bathroom, and then,
Would you like me to move your car to a parking spot and grab the keys? Is your purse, where's that at? Okay, I'll grab that for you, Phil.
we're going to find our bathroom first. Is there a bathroom she can use on there?
It is. I need a, can I have a business card?
Yeah, I'll give you a card.
Let you call back. Figure out how to coordinate it.
Okay, hold on to that. We'll stick that in your car.
Get there, but we are on the phone, so they get that.
Hey, can she use a bathroom quick? Okay.
Go on there right now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1809 hours. That concludes the interview for now with Leann Harris. What's that? I think you left it on that table. I'll give. It was that red cup, right? Okay, no problem. Thank you, sir. You want to go ahead, man? You can go.
Hey, is this your bag?
Hey, let me talk to him.
Hey, Stop, wants to talk to you. Grab it.
Yeah, I was trying to call you from inside, but my phone, I wasn't getting a signal. We talked to her, and there's no domestic issues or anything, never has been, except just your daily arguments once in a while. Cooper is definitely their only kid. Normally he goes to daycare every day. There's a Home Depot daycare over here. She said this was always her biggest fear. They've always talked about this. I don't know if it just hasn't sunk into her yet, because she answered her phone with her mom, and her mom was just like blowing up hysterical on the phone. But I don't know if it's just hasn't sunk in, and she's just in that much shock still right now. But I mean, she hasn't shed a tear yet. Yeah, but yet she's not showing any signs of like, I don't give a fuck. You know, it's like. Yeah, well, she says that she left for work at 7 o'clock this morning. He normally goes into work around 9. He was supposed to drop the kid off. She says that he tried to call her like around 4 o'clock, but he called her at 4 and said he was heading out to go meet some friends, and for her to go pick up Cooper from daycare. Then she said he tried to call her one other time, and she missed the call, and then she hasn't been able to get in touch with him since, and that's exact. Yes. So she says it varies. They take turns. It depends what time she's got to be in work and what time he's got to be in. But, well, exactly, and that's what I asked her about. And I said, well, what would have brought that conversation up? I said, did that happen once before or something? She goes, no. She goes, but you always see it on the news, and I always worry about something like that. And, yeah, I know. But I think what we need to do is, I already told her we're going to her house first. She's going to leave her car here, and she's going to ride with us. I think we need to go to the house first, and then from the house take her to headquarters and get a formal video interview of her. Okay. Okay, that's what I was going to check with you on. I mean, I didn't know if you wanted to go on the route of a consent search and have her do the form, or if you just wanted to do the formal warrant on it.
At the end of that, Detective, was that you getting in the car with Detective Racy at some point?
Yes.
Okay. Let's play that very short 5 minutes.
Yeah, the 4104, just the 39, and 30, got Sandtown Road shut down at Liddell Lane. Looks like it's going to be Power Ferry at Interstate North. I just got a report of a whole Honda Accord of Black King Liberty. They're going to pull into a shopping center. I have a second 20 half-hour freeway. They're going to turn lane. Oh, no, that would be good one.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, but that's gonna be in front of the 2010 Towers Ferry Road. Okay, this might be a duplicate. He's given us a different location, but the 78s are similar to the one we already sent over to GSP.
Nice, I'm clear. I'll continue until you get advice.
Check.
Reference to signal line, they call 4507.
After.
Alright,
Great.
this is what we're gonna do, okay?
This is gonna record the 62 October.
You have a key right at
They're
your
lying
house?
on the ground with a chevron. As long as the person is unresponsive,
We're
or they
gonna,
have to ride.
my supervisor wants to go in and do a search warrant on the house. It's not a search warrant, you know, to tear your house apart, it's a search warrant just to check the house. He's gonna be sitting out there with a uniform officer until they get the search warrant, and I'm gonna take you with me up to headquarters, okay? You give me a key to the house?
My neighbor has one and she's there.
Okay. Well, you're gonna need the key back, that's just, because you're gonna come with me, and he's gonna stand by with the uniform officer until they get the search warrant to go in there.
I have 3 animals,
What do you have in the house?
2 cats.
3319, that will be a duplicate. This is gonna be the one Towers Ferry, so you
Okay.
go stand for
A little longer, or they go?
It's about 45 pounds. In the bathroom, the
That fourth one, the 2010 Towers Ferry Road, and the turn lane is the
Once
same
we're
one
done
that we already
with all
sent
the
over to
interviews,
GSP.
then we will have all that arranged, okay? Right now, we're still just in the beginning process and everything. But you're gonna be in the same place where he is, so we're going to the same office. We'll get all that set, okay? We're off Terrell Mill, right? Yeah, it's off Terrell Mill, right?
1632, it'll be 1014 adult female from our location.
114,
1212 Wines Ridge Circle. Terminal. Starting mileage will be 114059.
Let's check around at 18 to 21 hours.
04, reference to 41 Copper Line, copy, check with Smyrna.
Yeah, that's one.
Pull up and either way, he's just dropped.
Yeah, probably.
Pull up ready.
Okay, I'm going to do that.
Detective, per your conversation with Ms. Harris, thereafter, was she indeed transported to the Wind Ridge home?
Yes, she was.
Okay. And after that, did you indeed transport her to Cobb County Police Headquarters?
Yes, I did.
Ms. Gilbert, you need to see different reason. The phone that we could hear going off in the background during the initial portion, whose phone was that?
That was Leanne's phone.
All right. I think that's all I have. Thank you. Afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon.
I want to talk just real briefly first about some measurements that you had testified about. When did you take these measurements?
Last night.
Late last night?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who aided you in doing that?
Jesse Evans.
Can you tell me how many pictures you took total?
I don't remember exactly. I know it was definitely those two. There might have been a third one, I'm not sure.
Might there have been several more?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't remember.
Who was snapping the camera?
That was Jesse.
And let me ask you, how did you decide where on Cooper's head? Where on this doll's head?
I just went on the biggest portion of the head.
How did you determine what was the biggest portion of the head?
Just by looking at it and figuring out what looked like the biggest portion on the doll's head.
You just eyeballs it up.
That's correct.
So let me ask you about how the medical assistant or whomever, how they determined what was the biggest portion of the head from that March medical report. Do you know how they determined that?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you know who took that measurement?
From the March report?
Uh-huh.
No, I don't.
You're kind of stuck with having to rely on whoever that person was, whatever methodology they used, you sort of stuck with that number, right?
That's correct.
Right. So let's talk about then the medical examiner's report in this case. Did you even have a chance to look at it?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Were you aware that there were errors in the measurements in that report?
I object to that. It's not exactly what the testimony was. There was an error in the recording of it, but the measurements are accurate. And we corrected that with Dr. Frisk, we looked at the techniques.
Were you aware that Dr. Frist had to come in and testify that there was a mistake in the way the measurements were recorded?
Yes, I was told it.
Were you aware that there were mistakes made in the measurements of the placement of the car seat in this case?
No, I was not.
Nobody at Cobb Police Department told you about that?
No, I didn't get involved in that part.
Okay. Were you aware that one of your colleagues actually had to come back down here a second time to reinstall the car seat because there were errors made?
I did hear about that.
Okay. You certainly would agree there is a lot of room for errors made in measuring, isn't there?
I guess you can say that. I'm not the one that did any measuring, so I can't really give you a definitive answer on that.
You didn't do those measurements?
I did those measurements there, yes I did.
I want to show you what's been admitted as defense exhibit 172, 173, 174. I'm just asking you, have you seen those?
No, I have not.
Okay. If you were to learn that these were images, these images were pictures of Cooper taken on April the 20th of 2014.
Judge, I object to that. I think it would be argumentative, especially if this witness says he's never seen these photos before.
I can propose that. You weren't there when those pictures were taken, right?
That's correct.
So whomever was there when those pictures were taken and had an opportunity to see how Cooper actually looked in his car seat on April the 20th and then again on June the 5th, that would probably be more reliable than any guess or speculation that you might have on that.
Judge, I think that would be argumentative as well, and I would object to it.
Okay.
You certainly don't have any evidence today that refutes that this is exactly how Cooper looked in the car seat on April the 20th and June the 5th.
Judge, same objection. I think that's argumentative.
I'm just asking if he has any evidence.
Wow.
No, because I haven't seen him in the car seat, so couldn't tell you.
You weren't present when that doll was placed in the car seat and
pictures were taken and scanning was done for you?
No, I was not.
So you don't have any knowledge as to how that doll was seated in the car seat, whether it was pressed all the way down or sort of set up nice and high, do you?
No.
In the recorded conversation that we hear when you're questioning the child's mother, you don't disagree that almost toward the very beginning of the conversation, she says, "Are you going to tell me what happened?"
I don't understand what you're trying to ask me on that.
Did the child's mother, wLeann Taylor, did she not ask you, "Are you going to tell me what happened?"
Yes, she did.
We hear a phone call where her mom is on the other line, and we hear her telling her mother, "Please pull over. I need you to pull over." And she asked her mom to do that several times, doesn't she?
Yes, she does.
And did you take that to mean she was kind of worried about her mom's safety?
It was obvious. I can't tell you in her mind what she was thinking, but
She said several times, "I just don't know how you do this. I don't know how you do this. This is something that I just really, really hope I'm going to wake up and it's going to be a bad dream."
yes, she said something like that.
And we can hear in that recording some whispering and some sighing and some sniffling. She was actually quite emotional when you were talking to her, wasn't she?
No, she was not.
She was faking it all for you, wasn't she? Is that what was going on?
I couldn't tell you what she was doing. I can tell you that I'm 100% she was not emotional.
You don't know that woman, do you?
No, I don't.
This is the first and only time you ever met her was in the worst moment of her entire life. Isn't that true?
Yeah, you could say that.
Well, I'm asking you, are you saying it? That's the only time you've ever met this woman.
That is the first time I've met her, yes.
And in what we just heard right then, all together in here, you made the determination she wasn't emotional at all.
That's true because I based it on experience.
Experience with her, a woman you've never met.
Well, I base that on experience that over my 21 years that I've been involved in several death investigations with a handful, including a child, that I've also been a lead investigator on, and she's probably the first parent that I've seen that was not broken down hysterical or had really limited reactions as to being told that her child is dead.
So that must mean she's hiding something, right?
Being argumentative with the witness.
I've got it on call.
Still keep the argumentative, and that's my objection.
Y'all arrested her yet?
No, she was never arrested.
Isn't it true in your report that you put her only concern was to be able to see Ross?
That's correct.
Based on what we just heard, that was your takeaway. That was her only concern, was to see Ross.
Well, considering her child is dead and she didn't ask me if she could see her child, and all she asked about was seeing Ross, yes.
Are you going to tell me what happened? You don't think that was some concern? Well, she wanted some information. Are you going to tell me what happened?
Well, obviously she wanted to know what happened to her kid.
Well, what about when she's pleading with her mother to pull over for her mother's safety? She was showing some concern for somebody other than herself, wasn't she?
Yeah, because her mother was hysterical that her grandkid was dead, but she wasn't.
So that must mean suspicious.
It's odd.
You said to her, I know you're still in shock. Are you with me on all this right now? You going to be okay? You asked her that?
Yes, I did.
Why'd you ask her if she was still in shock?
Just trying to feel her out and make sure she is all right and be able to get some kind of conversation with her.
Sure. Moments later, you had just done this death notification and told this woman that her child was dead. And were you just faking concern for her to try to get information?
No, that's not what I do.
Well, you said it. I know you're still in shock. Are you with me on all this right now? Are you going to be okay?
Yeah, I did tell her that because I do care. I do have feelings. And she is, at the time, she is a victim because her son did die. So I show compassion to people that lose a family member.
And you believed at that point in time that she might very well be in shock.
I honestly don't know what she was in. That's why I asked her.
Because it's possible. In fact, that's exactly what was going on. This poor woman was absolutely in shock. Objection, argumentative.
That's good.
You found out during this conversation that she'd actually left her car out on the curb still running, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
With her purse in the car.
That would be correct.
Is that the kind of thing that a woman does if maybe they're frantic?
Objection, argumentative, and calls for speculation.
Well, we've heard that he's an expert in these kinds of things. He's handled these kind of cases before. He wanted to testify about that. He knows about these sort of things.
Certainly, I'm tender him as an expert, but he probably has more experience with most, but I still have that same objection of speculation argument.
I sustain the objection. Talking objections from what we all.
So we hear you on the telephone with somebody, right?
Yes.
Okay. And don't see him in the courtroom, but that was Detective Stoddard you were on the phone with?
No, that's incorrect.
Who was you talking to?
At the time, he was a lieutenant. I was Lieutenant Farrell.
The boss.
Yes, sir.
And we hear you say, I know. Yeah, I know. What did you know?
I don't remember what the conversation was.
No further questions.
What says the state?
State rests at this point, Judge.
Whether for the defense?
Nothing at this time.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence in the case is concluded. I've been explaining process to you along, and I think you know the process. But let me go over it again. At this time, I need to recess you, and we'll send you home for the rest of the afternoon and for the weekend. We'll come back at 8:30 in the morning. What I need to do right now with the attorneys is take time with them to review the next steps. We have to prepare for closing arguments. We have to prepare for my charge, and my charge means my instructions to you of the law that applies in this case. So we will spend the afternoon doing the last things that need to be done to prepare for the activity on Monday, being the lawyer's closing arguments to you, their summary statements, and my legal charge to you. Part of what we'll do is call a charge conference. It's my responsibility to pull together all the law that applies in this case and give it to you so you have the benefit of that information as you apply the law to the evidence of the case. The evidence is what you've heard over the days we've been in court thus far. Part of what I'm responsible to do is confer with the attorneys so that they know exactly what I will be telling you as I put the charge together. They have a right to know that, so they'll have the benefit of it when they make their final statements to you, their closing arguments to you. Because in closing arguments, the lawyers get to talk to you about the evidence that's been presented in court and the law that they anticipate I'll give in charge, and to argue to you how to evaluate the evidence in light of the law. I'll give you a little bit more instructions on that Monday morning, but that's why we have to take the time right now for me to sit down with them and go over thoroughly next steps and what the law is going to be that I'll be giving you, so that they'll have the benefit of that, so that they can make their arguments to you as persuasively as possible. So, those are notepads. Keep an open mind. Do not discuss this with each other, as you well know. Don't talk to anyone else about the case or let anyone talk to you about the case. As you still know and what you've been doing all along, and I very much appreciate it, is you've been diligent and careful to make sure that the information that comes to you about this case comes to you through this courtroom, to make sure it's my responsibility that the law is followed, to make sure that the evidence you get follows the law. So what you get in this courtroom is that which you can evaluate and consider when you get to deliberate. So do not go anywhere else. No independent investigation. No searching and seeking or anything. It looks like a beautiful afternoon. I hope it's a lovely weekend. Let's enjoy those things. And we'll be back Monday, and we will have closing arguments, and I'll give you your legal instructions, and as I said, we'll take our next steps. You all have a wonderful weekend. Monday morning, 8:30.
Let's all rise for the jury,
If
please.
I said 9, I didn't mean it. 8:30.
8:30. Please watch yourself going down.
Course of habit, 8:30. Can't believe you don't say 9. I have a funny feeling I do.
Right here.
Well, have a good evening and afternoon.
I'll do my best. Please watch yourself going down. Please be seated.
We don't have to be standing so much now that we're going to be doing courtroom stuff. Unless you spill the meat, I'm not going to insist upon it. We're going to do our next steps, cleanup work, and have a charge conference. And in terms of steps before the charge conference, nothing at all to do with the charge conference. Does the state have anything?
No, Your Honor.
Or the defense?
I don't think so, Judge, no.
All right. Then let's take 5 minutes. Let's come back at, we'll take 7 minutes. By my watch, which none of you have. But let's come back in the general area of 2:30.